let's see, Nvidia Freestyle game filter, SSRTGI, which is screen space ray traced global illumination. And essentially, everything's maxed out, all the settings are maxed out in the game, except for ambient occlusion is completely turned off. Because instead I'm using the SSRTGI to handle all ambient occlusion, global illumination, and bounce lighting, the indirect lighting. So here's what it looks like off. Super flat. Essentially, there's zero ambient occlusion, so all you've got is sunlight and then shadow. There is a little bit of post-processing that the game uses in order to make some shadows darker than others. Like over here you can see, wow, that is loud. That is super loud. So over here you can see that the shadowing is actually a little bit darker compared to the shadowing over there. That's just some of the post-processing. It's not actually ambient occlusion. So if you look at pretty much everything around here should have some amount of ambient occlusion to it because we're already in shadow. So anything that's occluding other things should be technically creating further shadowing. So you look inside a box like this, a cardboard box, that should be way darker. Or down there, the palettes, like you should not really be able to see inside the palette very much, or even at all possibly. But yeah, the game just looks super flat. So we turn on SSRTGI, and now it's using injected ray tracing within the screen space in order to get the ambient occlusion. I actually have it turned up higher than the default. The default value is, I think, like 13. Yeah, 13. But the problem with that, let's see if I can find... yeah, you should be able to see it here. So with 13, the problem is that it gives you the ambient occlusion around the object, just like with old ambient occlusion methods. Like this game has HBAO plus, which is an Nvidia version of ambient occlusion, and HBAO plus actually looks really good. It would essentially look pretty similar to this. Not exactly right, because it's not ray tracing, so it wouldn't be getting everything this good looking. But the problem with this method is that the ambient occlusion is ending too soon. Like over here, this should still be just as dark as there. And then up the wall should be darker than how it is. So we turn it back up to 30. And, oh yeah, you can see it up there way more so. Down from 13. Yeah. That's the difference. But what I did notice is that once you get past like 50, you can't see it too much here. It starts to lose. It starts to lose the detail on smaller objects. So like look down here at. Yeah, look down here at all of these little objects in the scene. Once I turn it up past 50, those get flatter. It's even it starts past 40. They lose all of their extra goodness, ambient occlusion, once you're getting up past 40. So I found the sweet spot is like 30. And then the ambient occlusion right here, essentially all it's doing is deciding how dark to make the ambient occlusion. That's the main thing. Down really low is where you can change slightly how much it comes off of the object, but that's only like way at the bottom. But Anywhere up here, it's more like you're deciding how dark to make it up here. So I just left it at the default 40. It looks good. Indirect lighting, that is where light is hitting an object and then bouncing off to light up and change the color of other objects. In here, I don't know how well this will show up. Oh, here's some fire. We can see it over here. There's not something very close to the fire though, so it might not show up so well. Maybe it'll show up on me. I am stand next to the fire. So the light and color from the fire is hitting me right there. You can actually see it. It's actually flickering a little bit because the fire's flickering. If I had this turned off, you're getting a slight amount of flicker, but it's not really getting how much light should be hitting me. The thing is though, the default value is 15, but I did like it to be a little bit higher, like that. So you can see the color of the fire now a lot better. I really liked how this looked. Oh, you can see it on his face too. See how the left side of his face is lit up more? And it's like getting a orangish tint from the fire. The problem is that it messes with how the rest of the scenes look. So in order to get one aspect, the bounce lighting of harsh lights like this, in order to get them looking really good, you have to sacrifice a lot of major aspects of the rest of the scene. It's overcast now, so I can't show you what I'm talking about. It's most prominent when it's like bright sunlight. It just like it's almost blowing out the walls and the floors where there's bounce lighting. It's like blowing it out too much. But at nighttime or overcast, harsh lights like these fires, they look really good with it turned up. Take a look. See how it's like lighting up the car a little bit? And around the ground too. So that it looks good like this. But yeah, the game half the time is sunny, or nearly half the time, so I can't sacrifice half of the game looking not right when all you're getting is one little thing, the bounce lighting, looking better. So I was keeping it at 17, just above the default, but it still wasn't quite right to have it up at 17, so I ended up just putting it back down to 15. Okay, fade distance. Now, I wanted to have the fade distance at 30 or 40 because that decides where off in the distance it'll stop rendering the ray, it'll stop shooting the rays out. It also helps with performance a little bit, not a whole lot, but it does help a little bit. But yeah, you can very easily see when I'm moving this slider how it's like a plane of ambient occlusion. Extra shadowing is moving back and forth, up and like back and forth. You see it? And I go like that. It's literally the distance that it's going to be rendering this post-processed ray tracing. Yeah, so I wanted it to be up at either 30 or 35. Somewhere really high, because then you can see it really good, maybe even 40. Because then at 40, you can see it all the way out to the trees out there. Down here at 25, it's like you can see it's fading. So I was playing it with it at I think I was doing 35, but the issue I ran into at 35 was that out here it really messes with the water. So the water in this game looks really good. Let's turn this down a little bit. So the water is, it renders so good in this game. Older games like this, they had such good looking water. But the issue I ran into is that the ambient occlusion that this is creating, all it's doing is overlaying it on top of my game. And it does it based off of geometry. So it has a geometry layer that essentially it's applying it to wherever it knows geometry is supposed to be at. And the body of water here is not a geometric object. So it can't get any data from it to add any ray tracing, which is okay because the water looks good. However, the problem is the ray tracing doesn't realize that geometry that's underneath the water isn't supposed to be visible, or is supposed to be barely visible when you're seeing it like really close up. But as you can see, it's still rendering it at the same amount of ambient occlusion down here as it is up there. So it's actually, it's creating this weird ghosting effect. And you can also see the effect when I just hit, not that, when I push, where is it? There we go. Well, okay, you can't really see it out here when I'm on the water. Okay, never mind. Never mind. But when certain objects like, or certain UI elements, oh, you can see it here. Right there. It's applying the ambient occlusion onto the geometry, but you're not even supposed to be really seeing the geometry, or maybe just barely behind the map. But it doesn't know that. It's just applying this as the same amount as it would be over here. So it creates this really weird ghosting effect where you just see the geometry like this with shadowing. And you'll also see it whenever there's smoke effects. So like when I'm doing a burnout, you'll see the smoke behind the car. You'll see the car's geometry through the smoke. And then also, if there's a lens flare, it's supposed to like blow out the screen where the lens flare is, but you'll see the geometry through it because of this SSRTGI. But you know what? It is a trade-off that I am willing to do because it looks so good. You know, I'm thinking I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna leave it up at 40 because there is not enough water sections in the game to let's see, 40 or 30? Yeah, let's do 40. There is not enough water sections, like missions in this game, for me to justify nerfing the quality and the distance just for the few times that I happen to be on the water. I think it's more worth it to have the higher quality distance all of the time and slightly worse quality on the water. Okay. That was really long-winded. Hopefully not too long-winded. When it comes to technical stuff like this, I probably talk too much. I get excited. And I like describing things. Things that are cool. Ooh. Look at that. This game's reflections, they are really good. There's the only screen space reflections that this game has is out on the water. And even then it's not, it's kind of like low quality screen space reflections that just have like a blur applied to them. But reflections over here, they look pretty good. They're just using cube maps to make the reflections, so they're not They're not quite accurate, but for being cube maps, they are pretty accurate. Like, look at that. See the light? The light down there. It's up there. It's not going to be perfect, but it's getting the gist of it. Okay. Now you can really see it. Nighttime with the fire. Oh, that looks so good. Here's with it off. So the game already looks good. And then, oh, should also show you what the in-game ambient occlusion looks like. In occlusion, let's max that out. So this is the in-game ambient occlusion. It looks pretty good. Like this is a good looking game. However, yeah, look at that. It's getting the darkness underneath here, like how in reality if there was a palette there, it would be a lot darker inside the palette in there. So that looks great. But the ray tracing will look better. Will look even better than HBAO+. Turn that back off. And it actually still has some of the darkness going on, not nearly as much. It still has some of it though, because the game's baked lighting already looks good. But then you add the ray tracing and it just takes it to the next level. Look at that. Especially look at down here. This looks kind of flat over here. But then you turn it on, boom. Now you've got the depth in the lighting. Ooh, look it up there. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And then the pipe is like right next to here, but not quite touching it. So that should be making it darker. Here's right here, it's not doing anything to it. It's not making it any darker. But then you turn on the ray tracing, boom. So good. Okay, alright. I'll stop boring you and I will start playing. Let's get car on demand. Sport car, muscle car, performance.